morning. Here we are for another day of yoga, and we're going to be working a little bit with our hips. We're going to be with our pelvis, our spine. We're going to come into some tabletop and a wee bit of plank. So this whole idea of exploring how our body moves, there's going to be a touch of meditative kinesiology to this lovely yoga practice, and that term was shared with me by one of the people who follow this. I can't remember your name, but that was so brilliant. Thank you very much. So we're going to be doing a little bit of thoughtfulness in our movement, perhaps more than even normal. Okay, so let's begin on our back. You need to have a strap and a block and have a roller handy as well. Okay, if you need anything for underneath your head while you're lying back, just to keep things comfortable, go right ahead if that's what you need. And let's get breathing. And then we'll get moving. So beginning here on your backs, and just connect with where you're at now. You might be joining me here at about 5 a.m. or you might be following along at 1 p.m. or 6 p.m. And so notice how things have been. How were you with your day? How was your day with you? How did your body and your mind and your breath respond to the various twists and turns and stuff that occurred in your day? Or if you're here with me shortly after waking, how was it in your sleep? And just connect with what is. And for this practice, let's just check in with what's an intention that you would like to have as a result of this practice. Like if you were moving better, if you were feeling better, if you had less symptoms that you don't enjoy experiencing, if you had less of that, if you had more ease, more freedom, more connection, what might you be able to do? Alrighty, so with that, let's begin with what is often called a hamstring release. You're going to take your strap, place it around the bottom of your foot. Now you can take the strap around the forefoot or you can take it closer to the heel. Totally depends on what you're feeling and what you're wanting. Today I'm going to actually bring mine closer to the heel. But it really kind of depends on just what you're feeling and how you're feeling and where you place that strap. The other leg, I'm going to leave it bent for now. Pelvis is easy on the ground. It's not coming off. I'm not white knuckling my fingers by any stretch. I'm just using the strap to support my leg. And now I come back to my breath. Imagine that leg being heavy and the pelvis being like mud. Letting that leg sink, sink, and start to dorsiflex your ankle. So the toes will come towards your face, but I don't want you to think about toes. I want you to think about the ankle. So pay attention to the ankle movement. The toes will move a little bit, but I want it to be more about the ankle and the tissue around the ankle generating the movement. Now you're going to take your strap into the opposite hand of the leg and bring that leg across, but the pelvis is going to stay completely on the floor. The pelvis will not lift. Yeah? And just notice if your knee has become more bent through that trajectory. So take that movement across, keep the knee the same angle as you move through the hip. The articulating joint is the hip. Now bring the leg back up towards the sky, so the foot's pointing toward the sky. Now we're going to take the leg 6 inches out. So I've got my right leg up, so I'm moving it out to the right 6 inches. Again, the pelvis is totally quiet. Let's bring the leg straight back up to the sky and bring the leg back toward the left or the opposite side from where. So if your leg is left, you're going to move to the right. My leg is right, I'm moving to the left. Good. And then you're going to come back up and move it out. Pelvis the entire time. You're being very, very, very quiet. In through that pelvis, you're not rocking left to right with that pelvis. It's just leg bone motion. Lovely. Okay, now take that leg down. Straighten both legs out away from you. This is always fun to feel. And notice the difference between your left and right side, and if there is any. One pelvis side might feel lower, the leg might feel heavier. There might be nothing. It's not that there has to be. It's always curious to see if there is. Okay, take the legs back to bent. Let's bring the strap over to the other side. And leg comes up. So settling in here. And then begin to move through that ankle. Now I've got my legs straight because I can. If you're unable to have your legs straight, your knee can bend. Let's have the hip at 90 to the best of your ability. Only because when the leg is closer towards the center, it's easier to hold. And then as you move your leg in toward that midline, which I'm about to do right now, the knee stays the same. The movement is at the hip. So no matter how bent that knee is, keep that movement at the hip. Okay, and then come on back. And let's bring that leg out. So I've got my left leg up and I'm moving to the left. And just watch your opposite leg. So I'm looking at my right leg, and that right leg, I don't want it moving to the right. I just want to have the leg moving, the left leg moving left and right. And that right side stays totally quiet. The pelvis stays totally quiet. Sometimes when I do this, I hold for a number of breaths. Other times, I just make it a dynamic movement. And while you're doing this, just notice through your shoulders and your jaw, are you holding any extraneous tension up in there that you don't have to hold? Okay, lovely. So now from here, we're going to take that ankle onto the knee. So I've got my left ankle on my right knee now. Now to do that, remember that pelvis was quiet. All we did was move through that leg bone and the knee. Yeah. So from here, we're going to take a really small movement into a twist. Some people call this opening the gate. I just call it figure 4 with a bit of a twist. So moving over to one side. And moving over to the other. And the idea is that the front of your hips are quiet. So the hip flexors are quiet as you do the movement. So only move as far as the hip flexors don't fire. So sometimes people ask me why this is. And that's because the hip flexors are more so vertical muscles. They pull things into flexion and they release to enable extension. And we are doing neither of those movements right now. Yes, we brought that hip into flexion to start with, but we're not actively holding it into flexion. We are moving into rotation. So the control of the movement is now up through the abdomen and through the hips, but not in the hip flexors. Unless you bring the leg towards you, which I'm training you a little to not do. So let's keep the movement in between the pelvis and the abdomen, and the spine and the ribs. Okay, let's switch to the other side. So as you place that ankle to the knee, that pelvis stays quiet. If you need some support with that, bring the leg straight up to the sky, rotate it, then place it. So the pelvis is quiet, 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 quiet. Then we move into the rotation, and the pelvis will move. hip joints stay where they are. Easy, easy, easy movement. Easy breath. Okay, lovely. And take the ankle off the knee. Let's grab that strap again. And you're going to move it around your legs and loop it up so that the mid-thighs are strapped. If you've got a crazy long strap like I do, just wait up for me compared to those of you who've got like a 4-footer. This 8-footer takes a little bit of manipulation. Okay, lovely. So now we're about mid-thigh height here. The legs are right opposite the hip sockets. Now some of you, this is going to feel immediately uncomfortable. So then you can loosen it up a little bit and take the legs a bit wider and notice if that feels any better, okay? So you want to start in a place that has some ease. Now from here, put the hands in the front of the hips and then gently lift one foot off the floor. I want you to notice where the hip flexor is and then do the other side really gently, okay? So just notice where that hip flexor is. Take the hands at the hip flexors now and bring the legs wide. Press the legs into the strap. So now you're taking the legs wide. I'm going to give you a bit of an angle this way so you can see that my legs are moving wide, okay? Now, when I do that motion, that wide motion, my pelvis isn't rocking, my pelvis is not tucking, my pelvis is not tilting. It's just the legs moving wide. So that's a combination of rotation and abduction. So we don't need the hip flexors. Yes, we are in hip flexion, but we don't need the hip flexors for any other part of this job. So can you move the legs wide without using your hip flexors? This is so important for those of you who have piriformis, SI, back, QL. This is such a big, big piece I find for people. Because so often the hip flexors will swoop in and compensate for things that aren't doing the job. So we have to help them quiet down. And you might then say to me, but Susie, what's supposed to be doing the job? Hold on. I don't want you to go there with your mind because I know that you have a very strong mind and you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to make that muscle work. But then that becomes a mental compensation. I want you to relax the thing you can already feel is kicking in when it really ought not to. So bring some compassion to the front of your hips and just say, hey, baby, little hip flexor here. You don't need to fire. Just relax, 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 relax. I'm going to have those legs move, but you don't need to be involved. Just have a Mai Tai, lie on the beach, chill out, relax, 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 relax. Relax, relax. I might be sounding funny, but I am really sending a lot of love to my hip flexors and to yours. Yeah, like it's really just, you're coaxing it along. Coaxing those hip flexors along to not fire. Yeah? You don't have to have them fire. And there's nothing going on at your sacrum or your spine. No sensation back there at all. Not at all. Yeah? Okay, take that off. We need to show these parts of our body lots and lots and lots of love. And I don't mean that, I mean that with all my heart. I say that with 1000% honesty and truth, yeah? Bringing love and compassion into areas that might be compensating and don't need to, because they really are doing us a service. Because we've had other parts of the body that for some reason or other, we could list all those multitude of reasons as to why they're compensating for us, but they're compensating, or they're not turning on, or they're not firing, or they've gotten atrophied, or whatever. There's so many neurological reasons as to why. But we just need to ask the ones that are kind of screaming, just to settle down. To give them the confidence, to give us the confidence that they can do it. Okay, now we're going to take the block. And you can choose the orientation, whether it's this way or this way. One's wider than the other. Bring it in between your block, your legs, so you're in the meat of the adductors. Yeah, meat of the adductors, inner thighs, and then you're gonna press in. So it's gonna seem like it's like back in the day of the Thigh Master. We're not doing the Thigh Master, but it might give the feeling of the Thigh Master. Although I never did use the Thigh Master. I just saw, was it Suzanne Summers who was doing Thigh Master work? Okay, now, some of you will find that this is too narrow and you're going to feel this in around your sacrum or your back. Take the block in the wider range. You might even need to take the block in even the wider range. Like you might need to even take it this way. Or like I'm going to take mine that way. I find a lot of people find this is too narrow. But you choose the width that you want. Don't worry about the foot placement. Choose the width that makes it at ease. Okay, now press in. And then relax. And then press in and relax. Press in. Again, no hip flexor. Knees are easy. Back is easy. That's it. Super, super easy. No hip flexors. And also your calves and your outer calf and your foot, they're not involved either. Neither is your jaw, neither are your eyes, neither is your tongue, neither are your shoulders. Just your adductors and just your legs moving into adduction on the way in. And then just relax. In and relax. In and relax. Okay, that's it. Let that go. Perfect. Come on up into tabletop. Bring the roller. This is probably one of my favorite movements to teach people. It's not one of my favorites, but it's one of my favorites to teach. You know why? Because I get people up into tabletop. So often in the practice, when we do like a thread the needle, people just drop right down to the floor and they think they're twisting, but they're not. So this one, I actually get to teach them the power of the twist. And I find it so powerful, truly, and significant for someone to understand how the ribcage and the pelvis relate coming into a twist. Yeah. And then lots of people feel some really yummy stuff in this and they go, ooh, I feel like I'm doing something. And that just adds a cherry on top. Super easy, super, super easy. Feeling that rotation. Try not to drop down. Good. Okay, now let's come to the other side. I was having a conversation with a small customized yoga therapy group that I run online every week. We were talking about the lateral sides of our body. Scooch that roller away. Let's come up into kneeling. And why is it that when we release through the lateral sides of our body, we can feel so good, which is what we're about to do now. We're going to come into gateway. And then we move this mic pack. It's kind of in the way here. And let's move over a beach ball, right? So don't collapse down. Think of a beach ball over that beach ball. One of the big reasons why helping to release in through the lateral lines as well as in rotation is because so much of our day does not have to do with side bending or twisting. A lot of our day has to be vertical and then moving forward. And even though there is some twisting involved in walking, we don't really notice it so much. So what's important here is that even though we're not actively moving into side bending and twisting, we're utilizing our lateral lines and our spiral lines to do our movements of walking and of standing and of sitting, because they are providing the support. There's 3 things that need to happen for any bone to move in a joint. And that is, we need to have muscles that are the primary driver. So the front here, that's the primary driver to bring the arm up. And then we also need the antagonist muscles to release, right? So those are 2 things. So we need to move in the plane that we want to move in. and have tissue contract to make it happen. We need a primary driver and we need tissue to release. But then we also need support. So if the tissue is not holding that arm bone in the socket, we're not going to move that arm very well in through its plane. So that's when the rotation and the adduction movements become so important. And when we're going to do this one more time, and when we think about the torso, if you think about standing or sitting all day, or even as we get older, there's this smushing action that can happen. Not like slump, but it's like, I call it the turtle head in the shell, right? And you can see how you kind of lose your slinky springiness. You lose the length. And I find that when we really pay attention to the supportive planes, lateral lines and transverse, so frontal planes and transverse planes, spiral lines, lateral lines, in the myofascial meridian world, we can make a huge difference in how we feel and how we function. And we then become stronger and faster. Those of you who run, there's a few of you who are following me who run. You run way faster and with more ease, less effort. It's like you bound up hills. You're lighter on your feet. Same thing with bikes. Same thing with standing up paddleboard. Same thing with if you've got little 3-year-olds, lifting 3-year-olds in the air. I mean, I can still lift both of my kids together. It's unbelievable. I love it. Okay, good. Coming back. We're going to bring the block back. We're going to take the block between your heels here, like that. Okay? So now I'm here and I'm vertical. And I'm going to press my heels into the block. Okay, so I'm going to come just a wee bit closer here. So the movement is like this. So I'm pressing my heels into the block. Okay, now the tendency is that people love to use their hamstrings for this. I don't want you to. Because if you're using your hamstrings, one of the things that might be happening is you might be kind of very, very imperceptibly moving forward and back, and I don't want you to do that. Now you might say to me, but Susie, I'm not moving forward and back. Just believe me, that imperceptibly you probably are. So I want you to just really focus in on those heels or ankles pressing into the block. And you'll probably feel it a little teeny weeny bit up into your bum, or you might feel it a lot, depending on who you are. But don't try and squeeze your bum. Like, don't you squeeze your bum. Let the bum respond to the movement of the ankles/heels. Yeah? Easy breathing. Easy, easy, easy breathing. Okay, and then let that go. Okay, so now let's come into a wee lunge. And imagine you can still feel the block. I don't want you to push through the ankle. Just feel that you feel, see if you can feel that you feel the block. Say that a few times. See if you can feel the block. Okay, and then start to move into a lunge. So I'm kind of curious to explore splits in these little Facebook Lives. If that's something that is interested you, let me know. Just comment below or send me a DM. I don't know if there's any interest at all in splits because splits has such a bad reputation of being horrible for people. But I think we can actually do them with a lot of stability without having to do all this extraneous gripping and strengthening and blah stuff. You know, I think we can just open up into them. Truly. If we have the stability, I think it just naturally happens. So that's something I'm curious about. If you're curious about it, then I can put together some things for you to explore. Just let me know. I'm not going to do anything that people don't ask me for, though. So if I see no comments, if I get no direct messages, you won't see sequences on splits. And if there's any other position that really has you fascinated, or if there's something you really want me to focus in on, then please do. Please, I'm happy to throw something up here and share along the way to help teach people more about movement, about pain reduction and eradication, and just feeling really, really, really good. And I figure if there's a pose that is sort of out there for you in your ambition, well, let's help you get there. Why not, right? Why not? Okay, from here we're going to come back into kneeling and then into tabletop, and then we're going to play around with a bit of plank. But we're going to do this in a way that if you follow me for a bit, I just don't jump into plank here. I want you to be a tabletop, take the toes under, and you're going to lift the knees. Okay, why I do this is because I want you to kind of slow down inside. Notice that you're on 6 points, and now we're going to come up to 4 points with the knees coming off. And a lot of times people anticipate this and brace first, which is totally fine, you know, like you can do that. Why I don't instruct that is because I don't want to teach anticipatory bracing first. That's not how I think we operate in the world. I think we operate in a responsive way, and that's what I want to train people to do. If you feel it's easier to anticipatory brace for yourself, then do that, okay? Don't think I'm saying that what you're doing is wrong. Just know that what I'm doing is different. So what I'm doing here is I'm feeling for the responsiveness in my body, yeah? As I lift my knees. The knees are only coming up about 1 inch. That's it. Yeah, and then I'm going to gently move backward and forward. There you go. Now lots of people tend to feel that in their quads and they go, whoa, that was hard work. Yeah, it can be. All right, so now from here you're going to slide 1 foot back. Okay, now still like watch how many points are on the floor, right? So again, it's not about anticipating, and it's not about kind of jumping all over there. It's now doing this in the plank, okay? And just getting to feel that. Press those heels back. Imagine that block between your heels. I don't want you to press the heels together. I just want you to imagine that block is between your heels. Imagine the block is between your legs. Or if the strap was better for you, imagine the strap around your legs. You don't need to do anything, just imagine. Okay, good. Drop that down. Okay, so now what I want to play with is a little bit of Superman. I think I've heard this also called pointer. But what I want you to do is I want you to just play this one leg, bringing it back, and then bringing it in for a sec. Now the movement, remember, I think I've said this, the movement of the leg bone coming into extension is about 3 to 11 degrees. So the leg bone will move on its own here, and then there'll be some point where there is a little bit of anterior tilt. What I want you to pay attention to, though, is what happens in your back. I don't want you to generate your movement from your back. You see that difference, right? So that's a generation of back, that's the driver, that we don't want to have. So I want you to pay attention. Can you generate the movement from your leg bone? And maybe you only come here, right? But I just want you to play with that leg bone in the hip socket and not, I mean, if you have to brace in your abdomen, then do that. But what I would prefer, because I'm teaching about responsiveness, if that's the game you want to play along with me, that's how I'll instruct this. Is that if you want to play along with me with that, if it resonates with you, then as you bring that leg back, feel what goes on in your abdomen and try not to resist the call to do the back arch. Instead, when you feel when you do the back arch, I want you to stop that leg bone movement. Right? Just stop it. Oftentimes I find this is more of an awareness game and a coordination game. It's just a pattern that you haven't considered, so you don't know how to do it. So initially, some of you might be doing that simply because it's just what you know, and to be instructed in other ways, like, what? And so you just need to do it a few times to get it. So it's not a strength thing, it's not it's not that you're stupid thing, it's not that you don't get it, it's not that your body is whatever, it's just, seriously, it's new, right? That's it. Okay, now let's do the other side. And those of you who are playing the responsive game, just notice what goes on in your abdomen. Notice what goes on through your arms as you change the load from 4 points to we'll call it 3 points with that foot coming back. Okay? And so now we're going to play with the arms on the front because that's where the arms are at the top. I sometimes love what I say out loud. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you're going to bring the arm up alongside towards your ear. Now what you might be finding is that you might need to arch your back to do that, or you might be rounding your back to do that. So I want you to notice how far do you actually get with your arm. So on this given day, how much range of motion do you have? So don't try and push it because of some perceived idea of what that movement is. Just notice what yours is. Yeah, just pay attention to it. See, the cool thing about just being aware of what your optimal range is on any given day, like just what you're doing, is that you start to understand the patterns of why you move and how you move the way you move. Yeah? And so when you recognize the patterns, that's really where the power is. That's where you can start to make changes. If you just kind of notice, oh, shoulder tight, better stretch, that's only a little teeny weeny speck of it, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do is take one leg back, and then we're going to take one leg forward, or one arm forward, right? And just notice if you can do this. You might not have that availability, so you might just be still bringing that leg back. Yeah? Just think, leg, your hip and shoulder. Yeah? And again, the movement might be teeny weeny. I certainly remember after I had my babies, after I fell down my stairs, you know, I wasn't going into full range right away. So full range is like, it's overrated. Full range of motion is overrated. Good range, awareness, now that is where the gold is. Okay, so now let's just for fun, come back to plank. Now see how your plank feels, just to notice. Okay, good, and then let's come up into your dog. And then come back down to plank. And then come back to dog. Okay, good, drop the knees, perfect. Okay, so now come back up into kneeling. Let's come back to lunge. Good, and now let's see what the lunge feels like. And let's add a side bend. Imagine the water coming from your armpit down the inside of your arm, down through the fingertips, and into a teacup on the floor. And then come on up, bring the hands together, take a twist. Keep the nose and your chin in line with your breastbone. Good, and then coming on back. And then other side. And side bending. Think about the teacup and the water coming from the armpit down through the inner arm. Easy through your feet. Easy through your breath. And then come back up. Hands come together. Let's take a twist. Good. And then coming on back. Let's come in the gateway. Let's see where that's at now. Bring the leg over here and side bend. Remember, beach ball. Beach ball, beach ball, beach ball. And if you want to bring that arm up alongside, you can. Lovely. And then other side. Good. Come on down. Let's come back down to the floor. And rest on your back. And now we're coming back to the start. And notice where your breath is. Notice where your mind is. Notice where your body is. Alrighty. Let's take one leg straight. Bring the other leg up towards your belly. Holding on to that leg with the opposite arm. And then take that across. Both shoulders are staying even on the floor. If I'm moving to the right here, my left shoulder is staying right on the ground. Good. And then coming on back. And then other side. Perfect. Good. And then the legs come down. Lovely. And now just rest back here in Shavasana. And feel the awesomeness and the beauty that is you. And coming back to the intention that you initially had said to yourself about what would it be like if you felt more ease, more freedom, less pain, what could you then now do? One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is our awareness. And as one of my trainees said to me the other week, she said, you know what, there's a difference between talking about awareness and being aware. So let yourself feel, like really and truly feel. Feel what exists in your space and in your body. Try not to think about the feeling, just feel. I've been having lots of conversations with people about feeling and how they're telling me they weren't trained to feel. They were trained to think. So that as you feel more and you're able to bring what you feel up through the filter of what you think, what you become capable of, what you become able to do, is very, very significant. So when I'm asking you to feel, I'm not saying to shun thinking. I'm just saying let's build another skill so you can be that much more, dare I say, powerful. This work will blow your mind if you let it. So from there, you can stay where you are on your back. You can come up to sitting. Be wherever you are for as long as you need to be. And when you're ready to transition, take 5 breaths. Count them on the exhale. Change is 100% possible. Bring your hands together and breathe in with ease and out with gratitude. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Great sleep. We will see you in the morning.